Okay. All right. So while we set onto the bolster, you want to be sure that when you lie back in a cross-layer chest opener, that the upper respiratory tree, right, the bronchial tubes, as well as the lungs and the chest, which is what you probably consider your breathing musculature, but also the bronchial tree, right? It's kind of a beautiful vision if you think of bronchial trees. Um, but it's an opening of that. So when I lie back and I put my sand up, so I have at least the leverage of being able to push it around, I have it on me first, and then I set into my block over the bolster behind me, under me now, and feel where you can get that block that actually is supporting, and it's centered, it's not wobbly under your head. And so you have a firm support. And then as you move, make sure you got your belt too. Move your sandbag to either the rib cage or the tops of the thighs. This is where you might decide to separate the feet so that the core zone and the abdominal texture can still feel fairly calm and relaxed. So there's curve, right? So let there be some curve patterns in the core bones. And as you reach back, if you have your sand on the ribs, that's also fine. When you reach back to your belt, I want you to feel the awareness of the feet apart and also the hands apart. And then what's in the center of those two movement beings in your body, right? Your arms and your legs are the movement, the creators. Is that what you're creating with their movement is circulation internally. However that lines up in your brain right now. Play with that, which could mean that you actually explore taking the hands holding the belt wide. And the perspective is to move the elbows and then to find a place of strengthening when you hold onto the belt. And then as you work your process of slowing down and lowering your eyelids, feeling the breath soaking internally through the nasal passageways into the breathing muscles, not just lungs, but the ribs, the intercostals. And feel if you can let that respiratory tree, the bronchial tube space, really rest, right? The throat, the mouth. Continue that ability to respirate by relaxing your grip and maybe even slide the belt. So I just place it besides me and then let the arms release out and touch down at the hands. So feel the levels that you are creating of circulation, whether you move your sand up a little higher, noticing that pins the ribs, so your ability to work with respiration is challenged. So why not use the practice to strengthen your respiratory system? It's like another thing on a checklist, but for a practice that we're in, it can be quite useful to inhale for a slow count of 4, fill the belly, and out breath for a count of 5 to 6. Feel if the position of the heels downwards is productive for connecting into your hips. If it isn't, you can bend your knees and place the bottoms of the feet on the ground and maybe kind of wag your tail a little bit side to side and feel if that creates a little higher density in the pelvic plate, right? Sometimes if I stretch my legs straight down, It's a bit tense in my lower back, actually all the way through my spine a little bit. And bending the knees makes it a lot more comfortable in my back. So choose what's comfortable, not experimental. And let's place the moment here in simple openness. Take a few more layers of in and out breath and feel if you can work with opening the chest, not just the arms, which is sort of a convenient way to attempt to do that, but really feel the ribs. And the sand is quite useful for me to use for the detail. But if you didn't have your sand there, it would be fine. But feel how you're lifting up your chest and you're using the back of the pelvis to center. So you might need to bend your knees. You might find the legs straight works fine. But we're going to switch into a very specific connector for our legs, our hips, and the rib cage coming up. So move your arms open and then lift them and send the hands back so they're overhead and they're actually going to touch to your block. So feel where the block is beneath. And then if your legs are straight, you bend the knees and adjust so the bottoms of the feet are pressing down. I want you to feel this for a moment. Wherever your sand is fine. But can you bring your elbows towards each other so you feel like you have kind of this helmet? Please leave the block under your head so you're not trying to do any uncomfortable neck maneuvers. You're just keeping it stable. But use the block as a reference for the width of the hands and the motion of the elbows closer. Okay, so squeezing them in. Now remove the sandbag off of the body. And then since you're free of your belt or anything on you, you're going to carefully lift up your head. I'm going to use the block under to guide that traction in my neck. So it's not a forceful lift, it's pushing and lifting up my neck. And then slide the block so it's beside you. And then I want you to actually just simply slide down your bolster. And then knees are going to separate and hands are going to reach for the thighs or the knees and pull yourself up and approach so that the feet are actually wherever they're going to be, because you need to get your other blanket and place that on top of the bolster. Toss it behind you on the top of the short end of the bolster, and then prepare for Baddha Konasana with the blocks under the legs to lift up and enhance the knees. And then taking the belt overhead in a loop. It's already attached together, hopefully. You're going to cross it over the tops of your feet. And when you land with the belt, kind of secure it at the ankle beds and then tighten the belt down if necessary so that you can slide that belt so it's holding your pelvis. So kind of notice if you're like, let's say you're in a swing, right? You're going to have this belt supporting, or not the belt, but the seat that you're on, it kind of supports the seat. But this is a little bit higher likely than a swing, but get a feel how you are connected now in your inner thighs. Elevate your blocks enough so that it's easy as you lower down. Now the sand could be across your feet, it could be at your legs, but we're going to keep this zone clear for the exercises in the shoulders. So if you do want sand, you can place that anywhere that's lower than the navel, okay? So sand is an option, or not to use is okay. But experiment with the layer of blanket so it's close to your shoulders, the upper back. It's kind of snug in there so that elevation of your spine into your brainstem is sorted out for you with the blanket. Okay. The knees lifting might pronounce the arch in the spine. And if I have my legs lower and I have a deeper stretch for my inner thighs, which is hopefully what we can go towards, then noticing what you compensate for in your back to lower your legs. So adjust your height of blocks to where you're at for intensity. Find what's comfortable for you, right? What's reasonable in your hip, inner thigh circulation. And then we'll take the arms and cross the right arm over the left and reach the arms so they touch, they cross. And then you'll give yourself a hug. So you'll reach around to the shoulder blades. Right arm is closest to your chin. And get that feel when you're crossing the arms that you're really trying to wrap the hands to the sides of the back. Not that you'll get very deep down into your shoulder, but when you are pulling this way, feel the breathing, right? 70% of the lungs are in the back. So you might feel a little bit more pull on your inhale. And then let's intertwine the arms. So lift the hands, wrap the lower bones of the arms, try to get them to wrap around each other. It sometimes works fine, and it might be a little compact for you to get them to feel like it's a vine that you're wrapping. But doing the work with crossing the arms first, reaching the elbows downwards, intertwining the arms from the forearms to the hands, and then feel if you can slide the elbows as if they're moving towards the back of your space. Okay. Let your brain relax on the blanket. If it's a tiny bit tender in pieces of your shoulder, you can feel the tenderness when you try to lift your elbows. If it's uncomfortable, you can lower your elbows close to your heart, or see if you can work with that circulation kind of untangling in the rotator cuff. It's a muscle in the rotator cuff, right, that you're working through in this position. And now as you unwind that one side, now we go to the other. So left arm over right, hug, not so close to the bolster, but just around your actual bones, your body. Feel when you're wrapping around to the sides of the upper back, right? So get a feel that you're high up on the sides of the back. And then if you're pretty comfortable with it, and it differs on side to side usually, it's quite interesting. So as you intertwine the arms, feel where the hands might get closer. They may be far apart from touching on this pose for some people. This is an arm twist. And the elbows might be able to slide higher up as if they're lifting towards your face. Not towards the ceiling, but towards your face. You know, as you move your elbows down towards the heart center, uncross the arms and let them fall and center so that you're considering how to center your navel up to the heart and then broadly through the rib cage. So you want to broaden the ribs and work on that length with your breath. I find that when I'm in a pose of restorative nature, the striving emphasis could be kind of an insult to the practice, right? So finding ways of using the props radically to help you out. So however you land in the shape is fine, right? You don't have to strive to push the blocks lower. You might find where you are able to arrive with a comfortable lower back. So remember, the higher the blocks are under the legs, the easier that will be for your back, right? Because the farther they go out, then it narrows the into the sacrum. It narrows and tightens that the pressure. It's simply a pressure gain. So with a few more moments here, if your feet have sand, you might enjoy that grounding experience with the legs at the roots. So in breath, fill the belly, massage the organs. Exhale, feel the abdomen rest back towards the spine. Yeah, consider your existence here really in the layers of your body, your bones, your muscles, and the flooring of your body. I know you're on a floor, but you can mentally focus on that inner landscape. And now as we shift, we're going to change and move the belt away. So if you can find where the connector is on the belt, you're going to unbuckle, and we'll bring the knees to point skyward and slide, reach around. If you have a ball, you want to get that now. And if you're using a block for the leg hold, that's perfect. You just keep it near your left leg. But we'll slip the feet apart so they're separating. But as they're about hips distance, not any wider, but hips distance is fine. Make an impact of your back, almost pushing a little further back into the bolster. So that could mean that you push into your feet. It might mean that you give yourself permission to just lie back, which is half of it, isn't it? To give yourself permission to let go. And then can you lift up that right foot and feel the musculature exchange in your stomach with the walls of the front of the torso. So it's likely going to take your breath away for a moment when you lift up your foot and you're just trying to balance in the lungs. So cross the right foot to the left knee, and I've got this ball kind of held for something. Place it next to your left upper outer thigh or hip, or even kind of snug it into your rear, right? However it feels that it holds your left side accountable for the shift. So you're going to lean your body weight into that ball or block and hold the right knee with your left hand lightly. And when you cross the leg so it shifts over to the left side, get a pretty comfortable hold of the knee and tug on it a little bit. So you're pulling. And you can do a variation of towards you or across to the left with your hand and gesture of connection into the outer right leg and to the right hip. So if it's not feeling like it's a very high value stretch for you, it's probably not a good idea to bounce the leg, right? So it's not like pumping it and it's going to enhance that. It could be difficult on just the tendons here. So we're going to hold the position with the hand. And your left foot might turn open a little bit. So you're on the outer bones of that foot. Okay. Right arm stretches back besides your head. Take a few moments here. And again, if you need to scoot your left foot closer in towards your buttocks, the bottom leg, that might help you have a nice kind of lower base. Just think of this all as kind of architecture and how you create your support besides your props. Give it a few more moments. And can you let that right arm still have a quality of lengthening with breath, but not necessarily striving and kind of force reaching your arm? So if that means right now the arm moves open and you flush out through the right side of the chest, resting on the floor, that's perfect. Just seems like the right path to go. And now feel the tug of that left hand on the right leg, and take a moment when you come back to step one, when you push down to your left foot, the right ankle is to the left knee, the right hip is gradually centering. So you can tell that when you start with basically the leg pattern, the reclining kind of pigeon prep, you might get a feel of circulation right into the bones. And then as you go back to center, you're going to switch sides, right foot down. Now again, we lift up that left, now the other side for a moment to connect to the back of the lungs here. And the core corral of strength or challenging psoas work. And then as you cross that left foot, the left ankle to the right knee, switch the ball over, although it feels kind of nice here, but I'll move it to the right side. So I do the right thing. So I cross it over to the right buttock. Remember, you could use a block. You could probably stuff in your sandbag too. The idea is to just create a supportive package right beside your buttock. So when you lean over now to the right, you hold on to the left knee, and you likely want to start with that connectivity with your hand to the knee. Otherwise, your rib cage, right, could maybe not feel like it has a connector because the arms help you feel connected to your ribs, right? It's nice to have arms. So when I hold on to the leg, I cross it to the right, but I keep the left ankle right on the knee, right, the right knee. It's not slipping away, it's connected. And the left arm can extend back besides your head. So get a feel for breathing slow. Subtle work, maybe a little bit of movement of your hips. Very subtle though. And when you are in that reaching range with your left arm, do you feel the left hip is reaching, or is it kind of sucked into itself right now, and you're basically trying to maneuver the knee across to stabilize your hip? Keep in mind the one of the connectors into the pelvis is the SI, the sacroiliac joint. So we want to be careful that that feels pretty stable here. But don't rock the sacrum, not too much pushing and kind of rocking side to side, keeping it in a still point. I guess that means pointing and being still. Okay, now when I reach the left arm comfortably open and down to touch down, I feel where the ribs movement is also helping my left hip stabilize. Okay, so these two different layers of crossovers that we've done numerous times, you're so familiar with them. You know, feel how they layer into things like side sage, which I'm pretty sure we're moving towards in a few moments. So how would this connect, right? We're going to start to get a little more ambitious in the ribs when we move into that pose. So slide the right hand down, left arm is already down, and then bring the knees back to neutral. Feeling if your ankle on the right leg is tired, noticing if things get a little bit of heat. And as you uncross, you might put that ball between the knees. If you have a block, use that if you don't have a ball. And then work with squeezing into the ball or block. Squeeze and relax the squeeze. Squeeze in so there's that pelvic floor control. And then relax the grip and just simply be with something between the knees. And notice, how does that hold connection to your pelvic floor? And do you feel the adductors working on both legs evenly? And then with that regular arch of your spine, we'll reach both arms back comfortably beside your head. Maybe they're far back and down, maybe they're a little bit up. But as you push into your feet, scoot them forward because we are going to come up, and I'd rather have you take your time to get to sitting where you really feel some conscious controlling opportunities for your corridor, right? Your core, the corridor. So as you come up to a seated position, you might have to hold the legs and then arrive at sitting like you're pushing down to your sitting bones, right? Versus them swinging under you. You're pushing down to your sitting bones. And then we'll move the ball aside. And since we're already here, let's take a belt and reach it under both feet. And then feeling into your seat, push forward into your feet, from your seat to your feet, and lift up and find where there's a little bit of tone in the legs. And the perception here might be of effort, but get the feel of pushing forward and a little bit of curiosity of your core. And I like to come down from this with the feet touching down, lift up my center line up to the heart, and then just feel how much I tip back and forward to arrive at the balance. So just use it as a little bit of a testing in between these more restorative layers. Right? It's like it piques your curiosity of awareness in the muscles. Lower down the feet, bending, and then move the belt aside if you're using that. It's a very brief experiment. And we'll turn to our left, and I want you to use the layer of bolster across the mat. So switch it across, and your blanket stack could be, flatten the bottom blanket so it's in a quarter fold. And then the top blanket is the same type of folding. So they're just flat. Okay. So get a ball. We're used to this side sage pattern. You're going to place the ball or block inside the right leg. And then as you transition down, you've got a block opportunity overhead, but work with the possibilities here of a little bit of weight on your sides. Okay. So as you lower down and you approach the weight of your head on the blankets, feeling that link of the linking of the movement of arm over and down or across and down to the other arm. So we have 3 directions with the arm we could work with, or there's actually like 4 here. You could go right hand to left hand, or right hand to block overhead, right? Or right arm open in space. So it's more of a spatial sage pose, sage in space. Or that arm could rest on the side. We could do a blend of all 4, huh? So feel where the weight of your head is today in a good space. So if I feel like my chin is kind of lifting up, then it means my blanket is too low, right? So I want to roll it up a little bit on that side. And it would be a surprise that as you mature, your neck position might be forward a little more often with timing of your existence. And then when you come in this shape, you need a little more support to get to a supportive angle for your spine to lengthen versus to compress the discs. So just take some care of using your blankets, no matter what, just use it. And so your neck is comfortable. And as the rib cage is lengthening from the hip to the arm, however your right arm is deciding to settle, breathing through the ribs, spatially expanding and relaxing. Relax the eyelids. Fall away from focus on the opposing reach of the right and the right leg and the right arm, and feel where the center of the body, so that might feel like the waistband, is opening a little bit. There's some space there. That could be your only focus is, okay, I feel my waist have a little openness, which is helpful for our back muscles, for the core coordination, but also the tone and coordination of our upper and lower body. And truly find a place where your right arm is comfortable. So at some point, you're going to want to end this shape with a very comfortable right arm. So for some of us, that is when it's open and it looks somewhat active, but it feels like the armpit chest gets a stretch. So spend the moment where your in and out breath is circulating in your rib cage. You can feel that rib, a little bit of it. Sometimes I don't feel a lot of the rib cage. It just feels like my sand is kind of stretching me on the waist. So you could even put your hand on this right side of the rib cage. Focus on if you need to put your weight into your left thigh, or if you're going to spiral it and feel it counterspin open. Okay, now before we come up, I want you to feel that you are a little more on that left side versus kind of whipping open the rib cage to the ceiling. So you're fairly weighted to the left hip. Okay, so if you have sand on, you're going to slide that away. And essential focus here is that this right leg straightens out. So let's not worry about if the ball is there, fine. It's a pattern of consideration of the right leg straight, but you're on your left side. Okay, we're not trying to hold the right foot. There's nothing going on that's going to be concerning to the knee joint. It's about length. So feel the heel push away. It's kind of an odd feeling, isn't it? To have your leg face in internal direction and push through the right heel. Now, as the right hand lowers down besides the left, we're going to turn towards the left side. Now, the right leg doesn't have to stay vigilant with this position. When you come up, I want you to consider coming up. Well, don't consider it, maybe try to, okay? And then you're going to sit on your bolster, and this right leg had to bend because that's what legs do. But it's still, this leg is going to go straight. So I want you to sit up on the bolster, bring the left foot towards the right inner thigh. And I like to use a ball. I prefer the ball under my left knee personally, but you could use a block too. So you have something under this left outer knee. So kind of think about if you were to try to keep that knee open on the outside, okay? The ball is a little more expansive, right? It's not that much different than the block, but it has a slightly different energy. And then we put a sandbag on the left thigh and we get our belts. And let's put our belt to the right foot. I'm going to consider use the belt in a loop fashion. So I want you to buckle up. So you have your belt in a loop. Doesn't have to be a perfect tiny loop, but just around the foot. So you can put the belt behind your right hip. And then when you have the belt behind there, turn to your left, but hold the belt with your left hand. This blanket's in my way here. Okay, so hold the belt with the left hand. And what we're going to focus on is the waist. Okay, so from hip to the, well, in some sense, this is not behind, your ribs go up here, right? So, but for most of us, when we point to the ribs, this is kind of where we're aiming. So feel how you turn, and if your shoulder gets tired and weepy and it's complaining, then bend your elbow a little bit. But I want you to work with turning and still feel the right heel pushing. So use this firm hold on the belt. Even if you need to bend your elbow, that's fine. But use that firm hold on the belt so that you can push into your foot. So the foot's about at, it's between 1 and 2 o'clock for me. 2 o'clock's too far for my right side of my back. 1 o'clock doesn't feel right in my stomach. So Aim it to what works for you, one or two. And as you're here, can you lift up through the chest? Okay. And bring the right hand to your left side. Right? Think about where is your side. And lean down to the right leg. Now this is maybe very limiting how far you can really go with feeling stable and comfortable enough in your neck. And then when you turn your head down to that right leg, you can choose to keep your hand on the waist, the rib, right, the rib waist. Or bring your right hand down to your belt, okay? So if I hold my belt with my right hand, I'm going to keep the left hand on my belt too. This is an important piece of this. Not to push it back, but so that I don't roll my left shoulder down. So you might stay with the hand, and so my right elbow's on my right thigh. It's kind of perching my hand on my waist. It's not required. You might feel more comfortable holding your belt or putting your elbow on your knee, just above your knee. But when you slide down, you're going to lean but look down to the right leg and really work on this waist on the left side stretching. This is a big deal. This left side, what's called the QL, right? The quadratus lumborum, this kind of lower back wing on the left back fin of your body, right? You want this to lengthen, stretch it, the waist stretches. Okay, as the waist turns here. And now you can let go of your belt anytime. There's no requirement to hold it, but it is kind of nice to keep me focused. It gives me almost like the pull of my hand, gives me quality of sensation in my side. But you've got to climb out at some point. So you're going to keep a hold of the belt. So this gives you a thread of connection into your muscle messaging, right? When you come up into the nerves. And then we're going to take the right foot, cross it in front of the left shin, and you can take your belt off because you're going to use it in your arms. So we have the right foot crossed in front of the left shin. You can keep your ball under or lose it. This might be a time you can go without it under your left knee. And then here I want you to take the belt in your left hand up, and then hold the belt with the right hand behind you. So the position of the arms is left hand holding belt, right? Elbow is lifting up and it's pointing up. And then the right hand reaches back and grabs onto the belt. And you're kind of pulling that left hand down. But instead of the idea of yanking your hand, I want you to try to get the focus of stretching your left back arm, like the tricep, right? So if your back gets a little tired because it just had a really long side stretch, right? Not the spine as much as the side. You might feel like letting your back push into your right arm a little bit. Okay. Okay, now doing just what you can. If the elbow is a little forward, don't worry about it. Focusing on getting the sensation slowly. Okay, and then I want you to let go of the belt. That sensation will likely live there in the arm a little bit. And take the ball out for certain this time and cross the right foot over the left knee so the right foot is on the floor. And then you're going to twist to that right side. And bring the right hand back to the blanket or something you can find back there to touch so you have equal height with your sacrum, right? It's a little bit lower than that, but it's certainly a support. And then move the left arm to the right leg, hook the elbow, and find the right amount of twist, just the right amount. It doesn't have to be forceful. In fact, do 10% less than you know you can do. So it's nice to be in your home practice because even if you don't feel you're a competitive natured human, the likelihood of observing and just feeling where you can go to is, you compare it. So in this position, feel your comparison to your breathing. And if the exhalation comes out a lot slower than the inhale, or just not as much timing, like 3 count versus 4 count in breath, then you need to back off and not force the arm so much. Give it a few more seconds here. Now, when you come out, the left arm might be a little fatigued from all that work. We were just doing a lot with this arm. So when you roll your shoulders back, uncross the legs for a moment, roll the shoulders. Maybe they have some sound in them. And we're going to press off that sand. And we're going to come back into pigeon. So I want you to scoot all your blankies in. You don't have to make all your props perfect, like if you've got a belt behind you or something, no big deal. But look, move the right thigh back. Okay, the right thigh straight back, the hands forward and open. And then feel that arch in the back, especially this left side of the waist that you were working with lengthening and twisting. And the hands could go to the top right corner and the elbows down. This is good. I like this. So we're kind of moving the link of moving through the waistband, the ribs, the shoulders. And if you're just tired, right, from that whole sequencing, you can always stay forward with the connection of the front of the spine straight to the front of your mat. And you could put a block under your forehead, right? So there's options. Yeah, can you tune into what your body is comfortable doing? Maybe it's not this pose, maybe it's to lie back. So noticing the nature of connecting in your left hip, pigeon pose. Left knee is open, right leg is stretching straight back. Keep the weight into the hips. And now be a little clear on your left foot. So try to flex your left foot, like you're trying to move into the bones of the foot, even though it's against the floor. See if you can flex the foot. And the inner thigh has a little stretch. Okay, now we move our weight into our palms, hands pressing open. And then as we walk the hands back, so we're in a lifted pigeon pose, right? An arched back, a full pigeon pattern versus a sleeping pigeon. It's starting to rustle its feathers a bit here. Okay, so we're going to swing the weight into our left hip and swing the right leg forward. And now this left leg has been so busy, right? We're going to stretch now through the whole flesh of the front of the thigh. So lower down in front of your bolster. And then turn to your right side, getting ready for side sage with the left hip up, the right hip down. So this left leg that's been kind of worked up a bit, we're going to energize the side bones. So moving your props so it's comfortable for you. And I find that I get pretty antsy to kind of roll my back ribs, like the part that's closest to my bolster first, because that's where I feel the visceral touch. So what might be good for you is to really work on the side waist touching down. And so it's not as fancy looking, but it's clearly the work that we need, because if you were having a struggle with the waist, holding that stretch for a long time, try to condition that area. So sand could go on your side, your waist could layer down and come into the position where your right thigh is close to your bolster as possible, but it's not on top of it. And the left arm is reaching. And feel when it's not quite there on the block or overhead, where you're kind of loosening up these side strands. Yeah, think of this as the final side work that we do when we're gone through this whole layer of working on your left side. We're stretching, we're on the right side, but we're working the left side. We're getting all the way through it right now. So reach through that left arm, hand on either on block or next to the right hand or opening the chest. And simply feel the sensations and try to markedly experience them with your mental focus, sensation. And then if you want to go further, you deepen the breath and lengthen the breath. Yeah, and that would happen with multitasking, right? If you were doing a few things at once, and it's something that is quite internalized and produces, right, a shift in your brain, right, when you take those deep breaths, calming the nervous system. It's certainly a practice. So with a few moments here, if the sandbag seems to kind of pull your waist back, notice if that feels kind of attractive for you to move directionally towards, or if you're more comfortable kind of staying on that right side with the left hand relaxed. Okay, now if we have our weight into our right hip, we're going to start to slide the sandbag away. I want you to stretch out the left leg, trying to lengthen it like you're pushing through the heel. Okay, and then roll your upper body so you separate from your leg to your ribs. That's why that leg stays straight. And then I roll my rib cage down to the bolster. Yep, and then we come up, and when we turn and sit up on the bolster, anyway, you need to get up, bending knees and so forth. Necessary. You're going to bend the right knee and reach the left foot out and find where the support is with sand and things, which is a ball under the leg or a block under the right leg and sand on the thigh. And back to this whole rib piece, right? The whole rib cage or the rib chamber. When you put your belt under your left foot and push out through the foot, we reach the right hand back to the left hip with the belt as our attachment to the foot. But really feel if the undercarriage of that left leg, if you can pull with the right hand, and then when you turn the waist to the right, I like to keep my right elbow bent on this side more than the straight arm. So it's up to you. I'd rather have you focus on your core rotation versus overdoing it with your shoulder. So this might still give you circulation in the back of the arm, because just to give you an awareness where we are going to spiral into is that we are trying to keep the circulation in a peak condition on the back of the right arm. So then we get to this one, right? The Gomukhasana pose with the elbow up, the hand touching back, holding the belt. That's warmed up for a nice stretch, which is good for, right, the heart meridian. So feel when you turn to the right, left hand to the right leg. Notice if you're pushed out with the left foot, if that keeps you in this interesting state of balance between two sides. So depart from flexibility only ideas, right? See if you can maintain that core spiral, the spinal spiral. Okay, now we can keep the right hand on the belt and then feel the left hand reach to the belt on the left leg. And then as you pull and lean down, you can do a couple experimental flows here. You can hold with both hands on the belt, keep the waist stretching. You can put your left hand on the rib cage, lean to the left leg like you're trying to get some water out of your ear, that kind of a position, tipping. Or you can turn back and look at, or turn down with your head looking to the left leg. So I think I like a little blend of holding the belt with both hands and kind of piquing that interest in the waist circulation. So feel also the right leg pushing down to the ball or the floor. That's the other piece of this, isn't it? That's kind of interesting. So if you don't want to use the item under the leg, you don't have to. It will give you a little more stretch without that item, but not necessary to push it. Okay, so final few moments here. Feel the rib cage, maybe hand to the ribs, not so much the belly, but to the side. Push out into that foot. So much core tone. And then when you pull back in center, can you keep that reach through that left foot? And then as you take the hand to the belt, both hands, well actually now left hand, and then move the ball away. And then as you help your foot forward, I suppose you could put your foot on a block. That might be kind of a nice idea. I just, of course, think about it on the second side, typical patterning of mental intellect with this. But when I cross at the ankles, I'm going to keep the right hip moving down through the sand, right? So keep that grounding. And then take the belt with the right hand holding, okay? Doesn't have to be a perfect connector, even the loop is fine. And as you reach it back, you're going to hold the belt with your left hand, but get your hand as high as the hand will go. I mean, a hand is not necessarily a thing that you feel stretching. Right? I don't know if you feel your hand stretch, but I feel the muscles between my hand and my shoulder that stretch. So pull with your left hand downward so the right elbow maybe lifts upwards. There's no guarantees. There's no guarantees here. So it might go up, but it could be a little cranky. Okay, now try to keep your spine straight as you know it. Last time you checked, you feel like you're sitting up. Part of the challenge with this is the arms position this way makes it obvious if you round your back very specifically. So you have to sit at attention for this one. And that can be tiring. Okay, now plug into your sitting bones. Kind of feel if you shift your ribs a little side to side. So you plug in. And then let go with your left hand. And as you let go with the right hand, the belt, I want you to bring your right hand to your left leg and hold that and cross it over the right leg. Remove the ball from underneath the right leg if there's anything there. And then as you put the right elbow to that outer left leg, you reach your left hand back and you'll explore that circulation in the right arm. But I hope you get it to flush a bit, right? We're working on the lymph drain. We're always working on, anything for the lymph drainage in this session, since, we're trying to keep that support vascularly as well. So as we work on this drain in the armpit, the back armpit, now we're pushing into that right arm and twisting. Let the hand open. And it could feel like a stretch in the arm as much as the left hip and the waist, the spine, twisting. So give it a few moments if you want to turn your head to the left. Let the belly move with the breath, the sand eggs on that right inner thigh. Good. Yep, sandbag is there. When you work with the right elbow, right? If I have the arm straight, that could be problematic for some shoulders, right? If I have the elbow bent, it might feel a little bit more secure in the blades. So feel either the bent arm, the hooked arm, or the straight. Find one of those choices. Okay, so ribs are turning, breathing. You know, as you loosen up your pressure with that right arm entirely, okay, and everyone's got about, there's 3 different ranges, obvious. It's, you can hold that leg, that looks great. Then you hold the leg and pin it in, that's a good one too. So when you come around, turning front, we're gonna take the blankets, so if they're not quite right besides your bolster, you're gonna tuck them in. Now this time, if you've got a block way back there, get it towards the front side. And then move your sand from the right thigh, and the belt goes away and the left leg comes back. So I want you to kind of unwind through the legs, but also in the waistband. And as you lower down your elbows, feel how the position of Sphinx pose, this is a Sphinx position with the upper bones. Feel how that holds the bone shape and supports into the back waist. Okay, so you can let your head lower. There's no reason you have to pull your neck up. But get a feel here where the shoulders shift back, which might bring your elbows back in towards your legs. Okay, so rather have you in a position of Sphinx where your elbows are closer to your lower bones than they are farther forward. Breathing. Deep hip circulation. Yeah, and then last time I mentioned moving the arms over to the left side. For this one, it would be 10 or 11 o'clock, working with all that waist circulation, which is going to be nice, where we kind of journey with this next into work on hands and knees. So making it a little more symmetrical. Symmetrical. Back leg is heavy for this version. Now, if the left foot is flexing, go for trying that. If it's very uncomfortable to try that, then pass on the option. And as your arms are back into the center, now for all of us, we begin to slide the hands back, and it's already a pattern of moving your weight into your upper body, forward and down. So, you know, whether you have, whether your mind is agreeable with these patterns that we're moving into, just noticing very basic, essential support you can get from your arms and your legs when they work in tandem, right? Compared to your walking body, it's usually your legs that get you around versus your, well, I guess your arms do quite a bit too, but they coordinate your balance. So as your toes hook under left foot, we're going to feel the arms press, but can you move back into your center? So think of, if you were to shove your weight in your arms and actually come back to all fours, it would be a very tough experience for your lower back. So feel like you already are in all fours with your back muscles. So you're looking down between the hands, and then with your left foot toes under, you're going to lift up your knee, both of them, and then bring the right leg back. However you do this, right, whether you're perched forward or rounded, I want you to alternate bending your knees, and so that you're in between, kind of like a walking dog pose, but you're also in puppy pose too, trying to pre-pose yourself. So alternate bending and really get into the bottoms of the feet, stretch them out. Stretch out that plantar fascia. Push through the root of the toes back towards the heel, even if the heel doesn't strike down, okay? Now, the heels of the hands strike the most the weight in our body is almost not balanced, right? It's a lot forward. So come down to the knees on the blankets. And if you have multiple blankets underneath, shift so you have just one. That's probably plenty. Part of that is that pressure right on the kneecap. So you'll want to move any props off of your mat besides your bolster and push it forward and place the hands so they're next to the bolster, right? Right behind it for the most part. And then let your hands turn out as you lean into up dog. We'll call this upward seal, right? So lift up the chest, stretch through the core vine. Okay, and then feel what that's like in your core. Like notice that core length. Okay, come back to table, reach your hands either to the bolster or down on the floor and lengthen your spine back. I want you to go through these two patterns of movement, that upward seal, hands turn out and lengthen forward, go at your own pace, alternate these directional patterns. And then when you move back into your reach of your spine, turn the fingers forward so it's more of a child's pose. So you might move your knees open so that the waist can be caught by the legs, right? So the legs are catching your core and your knees point out. So take a few more moments in between the two sides. When you go forward and back, you'll probably feel the opportunity to round your back into cat. Lengthen your spine, both the front and the back of it, both directions. So go slow. Okay, last time, but this one, let's take our bolster and turn it so it's straight under us spine-wise. And when you move forward, feel how far back your bolster can be towards your legs and that it's supporting your legs. Well, it's kind of supporting your legs, supporting your pelvis. And as you're moving up, can you turn your fingers to face pretty much forward? But does that change the effect in your wrist? You might not notice a difference of impacting your hands, but you could feel different with the waist. Now come all the way down on the bolster and still keep a little bit, actually not all the way, but keep a little lift. Backtrack myself here. Feel where there's separation at the knees so that this whole back of the pelvis is floating up. And then with the hands off of the floor, so you're in more of a locust pose, right? You're balancing your core muscles, balancing your core muscles. So fit with a few more moments. If it gets real fatigued here, then you put your hands on the ground and squeeze your elbows towards your sides. Okay, baby back bends, which are actually what babies do, right? These are baby back bends. And now as you let the stomach relax, the elbows and the hands, everything kind of shifts down to the floor. We're going to stretch our elbows down, as I mentioned, and then move into Sphinx pose here. Now, we were in a little bit of this version with pigeon, but notice right now, if you can let your buttocks relax, that's the difference. Right? There's no pull at the hip. And let the core lengthen a little bit further. So it's like you're pulling your waist forwards. Breathe. Okay, now keep this essential focus when we lunge. So we're going to go into gecko pose. Okay, so slide the hands back. We're going to start with left leg first, forward and out. So when you lift up, you're going to come back to table. And then scoot the right knee into the center, so it's middle, and left foot steps up to the side of your, well, it may not be on the side of your mat, it might be still on your mat. But you are going to kind of stuff the bolster in under your right leg. So as close to the knee as you can go. And it may not be next to the knee. Mine doesn't touch my knee, but some people might get lucky and be able to kind of lift their leg and put it on the bolster. That works for your flexibility. It's quite a flexible venture though for your thighs, right? Your inner thigh has to be pretty mobile to get that position high up. So if the hands get a little tired, kind of wiped out, turn the fingers out. It will be a brief timing for this one, but so I recommend you try to work with your hands versus the blocks, but if necessary, the elbows could be on blocks. Now, lengthen your core body so your waist feels a nice stretch. I like doing lots of waist stretches and ribs, side body, but this is kind of that front quad, hip flexor. Okay. So if you don't really feel the quad itself, but you just notice the connection from your tummy to the leg, that space is lengthening, right? Let that connective tissue gradually open. Okay, and then feel the belly breath. It both goes out and in. Now, when you push back and you change the side, can you take a cat pose between the two sides, left leg back, and then round your back so that you round to lift up the very lower belly and push the floor away. Okay, now step the right foot to the top corner. Change sides right from cat, so you might still feel like you're part cat when you get into this gecko. They probably get along in some playful way. But when that leg is on the bolster, does it feel different on the second side? Or there's maybe the right inner thigh feels different than the other side. So likely there's some possible imbalances to work through here. So noticing that, if your left quad is more open, the right inner thigh might be tighter. And opposite for the other side. Somehow we create some balance here. Okay, now what we are going to work our way is this inner thigh circulation. So we're not going to leave the practice without an inversion from a forward bend perspective, but it's optional for you how you maneuver your spine there. So some of us will want a little more protective movement and some will kind of go for it. So let's start out with feeling this inner thigh still open. And then when the left foot, the toes hook under, kind of feel how this front of the left thigh is what's kind of impacted now. But when you shift back, you're going to turn your bolster across. That's all you're doing is you turn it horizontal here, and you walk your right foot into the middle and then get a block or two over to the left side. Actually, you could keep them right on the outsides of your foot. Okay, so lift up the back knee and pivot to your left. Now you got your blocks, so you can get some helpers to get over to that left side. The blanket might need to get pushed in. It might not be a distraction for you. But have that wide stance so that the feet are in a wide space. And you're going to reach your hands forward on the blocks and lengthen the hips back. So the hands are forward, head lowers down, and we have that wide stance. For some of us, this will work just fine. But one challenge you might have is pushing a lot of weight back into your heels. So if that's happening, bring your feet closer together, not farther out, so that you have that inverted quality of your sitting bones lifting up and back towards the ceiling, head down to the props. Yeah, give yourself props if you need that under your head, but feel the turn of the feet. Push out into the heels. And then let the circulation in the legs kind of take effect. If this is a little much for you, bring your blocks closer to your bolster and don't spread the waistband farther into the arms away. That's maybe for some of us too much. So feel the toes lightly turned in. Don't get too aggressive on that with your ankles, but a little bit of ankle flexibility could be helpful. And those of us that are far forward with the blocks, keep it there. Maybe take the block height down one or none, right? You can have your hands on the floor. It's going to bring your head farther down. Okay, now keep that open quality in the legs. And then we're going to lift up and then slide the blocks in. And you're going to start to turn towards your right foot, walk back to the right foot in front. And we'll take a shift into the back, left knee on the blanket, and walk the right foot to the left side of your mat, toe heel to the left side, sit down on the bolster, and then swing the left leg forward, okay? Since the brain has been down that whole time, right? You had a good minute and a half with the brain down. We're going to take that again, so we won't have too much time in between, where you'll push the blanket back, and you'll actually lower all the way back and bring your legs up, and maybe a blanket, one blanket under your head. Take a sandbag and place it across the bottoms of the feet. Feel where you have that very kind of immediate shift from one inversion with maybe a minute at the most in between the two versions. The second one here, legs up, right? Sandy feet. If possible, put that sand on the soles and then let the body weight trickle down so you feel the whole back line elevating up into your legs up, brain down. Arms in cactus, and feel the flow of movement of the diaphragm muscle. With the inhale, it's actually moving against gravity. And so this whole final spinal that we're doing is going to go from here to a little deep hip work and then to the conclusion. So keep the mind in a simple state of restore and simplicity with the lift of the feet. So the flex of the feet will stop you from trying to force any muscling further in the legs. Just let the feet find that setting. Kind of like you do when you stand on the earth. Spine long. You know, we keep the same inversion, right? We haven't changed the lift of the pelvis on the bolster whatsoever. But we are going to change the knees and the directional flow of the hip. So bend your knees, and if you have a block, you can find one. It's just minimum you want one. It's going to be fine. You can use it on both sides. You're going to bend your knees and then move your block, your sand actually off of your feet, and place your knees over to the left side. So they're going to be on the block with a little bit of that height. And you could put your sandbag on the outer right hip or go sand free. Sand is not required. You might feel, oh, this is kind of interesting. Maybe you scoot your body over to the right side of your bolster a little further, and then let the knees layer to the left. Sand would go on the outer right thigh, right? So it would kind of coat my leg. It's my little leg coat. Yeah, so feel that leg coat and feel that circulation sweep from the right side of the back, actually mostly from the pelvis into the hip. It's a pretty nice stretch. Now the ribs have to try to move center and to the right to encapsulate the full kind of fusion in the hip. It's only temporary and it might feel a little intense on that one side. Breathing, brain turns to the right. They hold the focus here where the waist turns. You know, when you do plan to go approaching getting out of this side, consider the first direction would be to turn the head center, then to bring the hands to the sand. And then as you move your knees back up tall, you're going to want to go right to the other side with the knees over to the right and then get a block. Now, I like to situate so most of my body is on the bolster. So I'll switch my hips over to the pelvis to the left side of the bolster and the knees onto the right on the block. Block could be one of two heights, mid-height, mid-setting, or low setting. Of course, if it's low, it's going to be a little more strenuous if you're short, right? So if you're short legs. So I would try to keep it at the mid-height if that's the case. And or if they're very long, it could go lower. But as the left arm has that spirit of spiraling, counter spinning through the chest, you could turn your head to the left and notice where the waistband, just like we were in much of the session today, focusing a good, 60% in this waist focus, the waistband. So I try to follow it through all the way to this one, right into the hip pocket. So waist down to the hip pocket and then through the leg. So fine tune a few more moments here. Feel how the ribs open, feel how the head turns. Breathe slow. Exhale completely. Good. Now we're going to kind of have our final pose. It'll be very different today than you might be used to, where it can be very just sedate, relaxable, but this will be a little bit more for the hip flexors. And try it. If it feels like it's too much energetic pull, then you can always lie back into a bolster bench, right? Having the bolster on top of two blocks with the legs on the bolster. That's perfectly fine. But sometimes it's nice to have something in the morning time of day where you feel a little bit of openness and kind of peeling open. Because the day you get in your habitual patterns, postural shapes. As much openness as you can produce now would be good. So as I move my head back center, I move my sand off. What I'll do is simply bring my knees back into the middle, put my feet on the ground, scoot my pelvis in the center of the bolster, and then stretch my thighs down. We started in some way just like this, didn't we, in cross-layer chest opener, but we had the bolster under our spine. So now it's under just the pelvis. So if this feels like, well, it's okay, but it's still kind of intense in my back, what you do is you would have your head higher. So you have the ends of the spine, which would be pelvis or head. So it's lifted so the spine in the center feels a little bit softer. So that's a way you can go. If that doesn't feel like you want to do that, you can also bend your knees a little bit and then scoot the knees in together, right? So the knees are together, the feet are apart. And that can still keep the sand on the front of the hips. So you can do that as well. Or if your knees need to be separated and then just not as straight of a leg for your knee joint. So come into this final shape again. If you find this doesn't work for you, you can always bring your knees to your chest, push the bolster forward and let your legs rest on top of it. Stretch your arms open. Feel where there is a layer of circulation in the waistband, in the front of the hips. Maybe there's some sensation in the pelvis, a very high density focus there. And then let the feet release. No weight on the feet, only weight in the upper back, opening the chest. Belly moves with the breath. Feel the ebb and flow of the tummy motioning with the in and out breath. And as the breath sweeps the lungs, return back to the inhalation, filling them up. Very little gaps with the breathing. Inhale through the nostrils. Empty out of the mouth. Is there anything inside that feels like there's an opportunity for awareness, connection? Completely surrender. Now you might start to slide your sand off of your front and move your knees to point up and slide the feet towards your bolster. So feel how you push into your feet, but also your sacrum. And then as one knee comes in at a time towards your core, push into the back of the pelvis and knees towards chest, spine, curl. Just really feel that curly cue of the spine. And then bring your hands to your bolster and start to push push the bolster forward and feel the spine, yay, feel like it's got some decompression now. Okay, hands hold under the legs, squeeze the legs in towards your rib cage. Rock a little side to side. A most unusual sequence today, I have to admit. Okay, fun to work with them. Now, as you move your pose pattern to a side, if it feels like you need to stay on your back rocking for a little longer, that's completely fine, because it was a lot of work into that back space. But if you're comfortable rolling and coming up to sitting, take a moment to arrive together so we have a connection of patiently breathing and collaborating our mental focus. Bring your hands up to balance as they press inwards and rest in front of the heart, and lower the brain down to your heart center. Surrender there. Feel the breath moving inwards, expanding the belly, and exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart. And gratitude for yourself and your practice. Namaste.